Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh, and this is your JIS News for Monday, January 29. $100 million is being used to increase the Jamaica Tourist Board's marketing and advertising campaign for the tourism sector. Cabinet gave the approval Thursday as part of government's comprehensive plan to limit the impact of the state of public emergency declared in St. James on January 18. At a meeting with stakeholders operating within the parish on Saturday, Prime Minister Andrew Holness said that despite the risks to the country's image, the St. James operation was necessary.
I never expected that calling a state of emergency would be an easy thing to do, that there will be some amount of fallout, but we calculated based upon past experience, based upon assessing Jamaica's standing. We calculated the downside risk, and the downside risk of doing nothing is greater.
Following Saturday's meeting, the security forces have made changes to the operational hours for businesses within the parish. Clubs and fast food restaurants will now be closed at 2 a.m., tavern operators should close at 10 p.m., and service stations at 11 p.m. Supermarkets, grocery shops, and stores will now be closed at 8 p.m. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is recommitting his government to restoring public safety and the rule of law, while dismantling the ecosystem of crime in St. James. While on a tour of the parish this weekend, Mr. Holness visited the Freeport and Barnett Street police lockups, where persons held in the operation were being detained. He met with the families of those detained and Public Defender Arlene Harrison and said he expected the processing of detainees to be much faster in the coming days. Mr. Holness, who also visited a number of communities, expressed satisfaction with the conduct of the security forces during the state of emergency. While on his tour in the Salt Spring community, the security forces recovered an AK-47 and several rounds of ammunition. The Prime Minister urged citizens to call the JDF hotline 837-8888 and tell what they know.
You now have this opportunity where you can share information with a police force and with our military that will act in your interest, that will protect you, that will ensure safety for your community. Give us the information.
The Ministry of National Security has received a $42.7 million performance bond from the company contracted to supply 200 vehicles to the Jamaica Constabulary Force. A statement from the ministry says the payment was made by the insurer on behalf of O'Brien's International Car Sales and Rental Limited. The performance bond represents 10% of the $427 million contract awarded to O'Brien's, which had only delivered 30 of the vehicles at the end of 2017. Another 66 were being held on the wharf as the company had failed to pay the general consumption and special consumption taxes for import. In a report to Parliament on December 5, National Security Minister Robert Montego announced that the government may claim the performance bond and use it to pay the outstanding import taxes so the 66 vehicles could be delivered to the police force.
The vehicles are on the wharf. The police need the vehicles. We have $42 million for the supplier. There is one option. We can use that money to pay the bond. It wouldn't be the taxpayers' money, it would be the supplier's money. And he's responsible to pay the duties anyhow.
With the bond now collected, a release from the ministry says it continues to protect the taxpayers of Jamaica. The statement also points out that the JCF was provided with 430 vehicles in 2017, while another 114 were repaired under a special project. With these acquisitions, the ministry says none of the 190 stations across Jamaica should be without at least one police vehicle today. The Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology is to fast-track a program aimed at replacing open flame light sources in homes with solar lights. The program will target vulnerable rural and inner-city communities and is being led by the Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica. The directive to expedite its implementation comes from Prime Minister Andrew Holness in response to a deadly fire in his West Central St. Andrew constituency Friday night, which claimed the lives of 3 toddlers. The Prime Minister says his office will be ensuring that shelter and the relevant supplies are found for those who were made homeless by the fire. In the meantime, he has given instructions for an audit to be done of all households in his constituency to determine which depend on open light sources so that they can be urgently replaced. Government is looking to develop the seaside community of Buff Bay in Portland into a coffee gastronomy destination. Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett says it's the perfect spot for coffee lovers to enjoy a tour of coffee farms leading from the Blue Mountains into the community. He says this designation would be an opportunity for entrepreneurship for the locals.
Where the experience can be realized in all its forms and we can create that cottage industry with cafes and with various kinds of offerings connected directly to coffee.
Minister Bartlett was speaking at the recent launch of the Jamaica Blue Mountain Coffee Festival. The event is scheduled for March 23 to 25 at the Jamaica Defense Force Training Ground in Newcastle. And finally, the Ministry of Health is encouraging individuals to take precaution against influenza or the flu and to see a doctor if the infection worsens. Acting Director of Health Promotion and Protection in the ministry, Dr. Beverly Wright, says persons with the flu should take paracetamol, rest, drink lots of fluids, and eat healthy.
And if you have complications, which could then be secondary infections because your immune system is weakened and you might get a secondary pneumonia or other upper respiratory or lower respiratory tract infections, go to the doctor. Do not stay at home and self-medicate when you are obviously getting worse.
In the meantime, Principal Medical Officer and National Epidemiologist Dr. Karen Webster-Carr says the ministry's surveillance report shows that the flu season is exhibiting normal and below normal levels of influenza.
Our weekly report, when we look from 2017, the latter part of 2017, we are below the seasonal threshold for influenza, except for the age group of the over 60. That group went into their season in December of 2017 and continues to be in seeing what would be expected a seasonal amount.
Doctors Webster-Carr and Wright were speaking at a recent JIS think tank. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.